I 44. Female recently lost my husband 48. Male, who had been diagnosed with leukemia 5 years ago. We had been together for 20 years and married for 12. His passing a few weeks back left a void in my life, but I made my peace with it, knowing he's in a better place. Despite my grief, I was relieved that his suffering ended. We held his funeral last week, and to my surprise, his estranged parents attended. My husband's relationship with his parents had been strained for the last 8 years. He had walked out on them due to their blatant favoritism toward his older brother, Jack 50, male, a deadbeat alcoholic. Despite Jack's lack of effort and irresponsibility, his parents always favored him. My husband, a kind and family-oriented man, tried to maintain a relationship with them, but their constant mistreatment eventually drove him to cut ties. When we started dating, I noticed the disparity in treatment and encouraged my husband to stand up for himself. Over time, he began to assert his boundaries, leading to conflicts with his parents. They couldn't accept his newfound assertiveness and blamed me for the change. Their attempts to drive a wedge between us only strengthened our bond, and after a particularly nasty fight, we decided to distance ourselves from them completely. After we married, we focused on building our lives together, including starting a business in plastic products and recycling. Despite their lack of support and criticism, we succeeded, unlike Jack, who failed in his similar venture. His parents never acknowledged their mistreatment or apologized, even when my husband was diagnosed with leukemia. They didn't visit him in the hospital or offer any support, which made their presence at the funeral even more surprising. After the funeral, my in-laws approached me, claiming they wanted to say goodbye to their son and discuss his estate. Knowing they were likely interested in the business and property, I firmly told them everything was left to me, as per my husband's will. They then audaciously asked for our home, claiming they needed it more than I did since we had no children. Their request was shocking and insensitive, given their estrangement and my recent loss. I lost my temper and asked them to leave, but they threatened to sue for the property. My husband had anticipated such behavior and had taken legal precautions to ensure everything was in my name. He also recorded a video for his parents, which I had forgotten to play at the funeral. After reflecting on the situation, I decided to visit my in-laws and show them the video. The video was a candid account of their mistreatment and his decision to cut ties with them. He expressed that he had always felt secondary to Jack and reminded them of their failures as parents. He made it clear that everything was left to me, and they had no right to harass me. Watching the video was emotional, but it validated our decisions and underscored his love for me. Despite the clarity of the video, my in-laws accused me of manipulating my husband and fabricating the video. They couldn't accept responsibility for their actions and continued to blame me. Their refusal to acknowledge the truth left me feeling conflicted, but I knew I had followed my husband's wishes. A week later, I learned they had decided to contest the will. Their lawyer informed me, but we were confident they wouldn't succeed. Surprisingly, I received an email from them, accusing me of trying to scare them off with the video and claiming they deserved a share of the business and property. I forwarded the email to my lawyer and prepared for the legal battle ahead. Living with my supportive parents helped me cope with the grief and stress. They took over household duties, allowing me to focus on work and navigate the legal challenges. Despite their threats, I remained determined to honor my husband's legacy and protect what he had left me. 2 weeks later, Jack contacted me, expressing condolences and asking to meet. I was wary but agreed, suspecting he had information about his parents' plans. When he arrived, he surprisingly seemed sincere and sober, unlike his past self. He revealed that his parents planned to defame me on social media, falsely claiming my husband had borrowed money from them for the business. Jack apologized for his past behavior and admitted he had wanted to reach out but felt ashamed. His confession and apology were unexpected, and I appreciated his honesty. He assured me he had been trying to improve himself and wanted to make amends. Jack's warning allowed me to prepare for their smear campaign and solidified my resolve to protect my husband's legacy. Throughout this ordeal, I found strength in my husband's foresight and the support of my loved ones. His video was a testament to his love and the clear boundaries he set with his parents. Despite their relentless attempts to undermine me, I remained steadfast in my commitment to honor his wishes and protect our shared legacy, demanding his house and business, but I refuse now they're trying to sue Maine. Part 1: The Backstory. I 44F recently lost my husband 48M. We had been together for 20 years, married for 12. 5 years ago, he was diagnosed with leukemia, and a few weeks back, he passed away. I have made my peace with it. I know I'm going to miss him terribly, and my life will never be the same again. I highly doubt I'll ever be able to love someone as much as I loved him, but he's in a better place now, He was very sick the last few months of his life, so I'm just relieved he's finally at ease. Last week we had a funeral service for him. I was not expecting his parents to show up because they did not have the best relationship with him. They hadn't been on speaking terms for the last 8 years. My husband had walked out on his family and sworn never to speak to them again, and for good reason. You see, my in-laws had a golden child, my husband's older brother, Jack 50M, who is a deadbeat alcoholic. Despite his issues, Jack was always preferred over my husband. No matter what my husband did, he was always second best. My husband tried his best to be there for his parents and his brother, but they never valued him. When we started dating, I noticed how differently they were treated at home. I spoke to my husband about it several times and told him to stand up for himself, but he said this was his family and he didn't want to be anything but kind to them. He was too nice for his own good. After we started dating, he began to take less of their BS and occasionally stand up for himself because I kept reminding him that he didn't need such a family in his life. By the time we had been together for 3 years, he had no tolerance for his family's behavior. This led to friction between them because they were used to walking all over him. They tried to brainwash my husband into leaving me, but it didn't work and only made our relationship stronger. My in-laws and I have always been at odds, but I've always been on the right side of things. They have been nothing but horrible to us. When they showed up at the funeral with Jack, I was surprised. The last time we interacted, my husband and I had walked out after a nasty fight. We had been trying to distance ourselves from my in-laws anyway, so it wasn't like we had a good relationship. They invited us to a Christmas dinner, and we attended out of courtesy. At the party, they talked about how my husband's new business was doomed to fail. After the party, we confronted his parents about it, and they said they were just helping him realize that he should stop copying his brother, Jack, who had started a similar business. Jack's business did not take off because he lacked the acumen and hard work of my husband. We walked out after deciding never to speak to them again. They never bothered to get in touch with us again, even when my husband was diagnosed. They did not visit us in the hospital either. Showing up at the funeral was a surprising move. I ignored them throughout the service and only approached them after it was over. They tried to speak nicely, but I wasn't buying it. I told them they could offer condolences and then leave because I wasn't interested in interacting with them. They dropped their act and said they needed to speak to me in private. I told them they would need to wait until everyone had left. After everyone had left, I spoke to them outside the venue. Jack had left with everyone else, so it was just my in-laws and me. They said they had thought about visiting my husband in the hospital, but decided against it, because he was already sick and they didn't want to bother him. It was a lame excuse for not visiting their son on his deathbed. I told them I didn't need their justification and they needed to get to the point because I had had a long day. They said they wanted to say goodbye to their son one last time and talk about what he had left behind. Everyone knew I was going to take over the business because I had been with him every step of the way. We had the paperwork sorted out. They had no chance at the business, so they asked for the house. They claimed they needed it more since we didn't have kids, and they were sick of living in their own home. They planned on living in our house and renting out theirs for extra income. I was shocked they even suggested this. After not speaking for 8 years, they showed up at the funeral and asked for our house. I lost my temper and yelled at them to get out. They started yelling back, saying they were here for peace, but I was being a jerk. They played the age card, saying I didn't know how to respect the elderly. I said they didn't know how to respect the dead, and they threatened to sue me to get the property. My husband had clearly stated in his will that everything was going to me, so I didn't know why they thought threatening to sue was a good idea. I told them they would never win, and it was their own fault their son hadn't spoken to them for the past 8 years. They said I had brainwashed him into turning against them, and they would make sure I got nothing. I told them to leave, and when they finally left, I drove back home. I had been very upset and forgotten about a video my husband had asked me to play for his parents if they showed up at his funeral. It had slipped my mind, and I only remembered it after getting home. We had recorded the video a month before he passed away. I knew it would be very hurtful for his parents. But I decided to take a break for a couple of days and then get back to my in-laws. Part 2: the video. A few days after the funeral, I reached out to my in-laws. We had each other blocked everywhere, so I decided to drive to their house and play the video for them in person. They were shocked to see me, but I told them my husband had left something for them, and I wanted to show it to them. They were curious. So we gathered in the living room and I played the video. In the video, my husband called out his parents on their terrible behavior. He said he always felt like less of a priority because they preferred Jack. He reminded them of all the ways they had treated him terribly, like refusing to pay for college but spending thousands on Jack. He mentioned how they dismissed his startup and never apologized. They didn't speak to him when he was diagnosed, so they had no right to harass me. He told them they deserved nothing and to never show up around me again. He said he had been dead to them for a long time, so his actual death shouldn't matter. The only family he ever had was me. It was touching, and I had tears in my eyes by the end of the video. After the video, I told them that if they tried to sue me, I would play this video as evidence that my husband didn't want anything to do with them. They had nobody to blame but themselves. Instead of accepting that, they said I was a horrible person for playing the video, accusing me of using editing apps to morph their son's face onto someone else. They said I was selfish and didn't deserve anything my husband had left. They were genuinely upset, and since then, I've been wondering if I did the wrong thing by playing that video. Even though they treated my husband badly, they were his parents, and maybe they genuinely felt bad.